Why sexualize a conversation with a woman, and how exactly to do it. Today we will analyze how, in real life, on a date, you can add a sexual subtext to communication. The first thing we need to clearly understand is that sexualizing communication means showing the person, that is, your companion, that you want her, and that you yourself are a person with sexual needs who is not ashamed of their desires. Your goal as a man is to awaken desire in a woman. You might think I'm stating the obvious, but this is a very important point. I want to place a special emphasis on the mechanics of female desire, because it is rarely discussed. Due to undeniable biological and physiological reasons, a woman begins to experience desire much more slowly and not as easily as a man. In other words, men physically react to stimuli in everyday life much more simply. They quickly experience desire, which easily turns into a state of arousal. For women, it's more complex and takes longer. When desire finally appears, there's still work to be done to bring it to arousal, but that's not our goal right now. Our task is precisely to awaken desire in her, to make her want you. This is a long, painstaking process, which you will surely handle excellently if you follow my advice precisely. How can this be done? That is the main question. But before we move on to practice, as there is always something to discuss before, I will outline the basic rules. They must be followed at all times, constantly taking into account female psychology. The first rule, however obvious it may sound, is to act step by step. Don't rush and don't start too abruptly. If you are used to acting head on, you will probably say, "It's do or die," but it works like natural selection. Yes, that's an argument, and I accept it. But if you are genuinely interested in the woman sitting in front of you, if it's not just a call of libido where you don't care who is next to you, that's a completely different story. We assume that you want this particular woman, and you don't want to scare her away. And it's very easy to scare a woman away and make her withdraw into herself for many reasons. Even if deep down she wants you and is interested from the very beginning, let's face it, if she agreed to a date, there's already interest. You need to be careful. Suppose you are in a public place and you allow yourself a gesture that is too forward or an inappropriate comment directed at her. She might easily take offense simply because there are people around. All these nuances must be taken into account. This is why it is necessary to act in stages and respect the surrounding environment. And this is my second piece of advice: show social intelligence. In other words, you will have to adapt to the person in front of you, adapt to the environment, so as not to choose the wrong word or an inappropriate gesture in the wrong place and at the wrong time. If you are at your home and not in a restaurant, bar, or somewhere else, if you are already in an intimate setting, great. She is almost certainly already interested. Otherwise, why would she have come to you? But at the same time, with rare exceptions, she is probably scared, and fear makes girls shut down. That's why, wherever you are, at your place, at hers, in a restaurant, or on the street, you need to act gently and step by step. Of course, if you're lucky and she's already very aroused, well, enjoy the moment. Don't overcomplicate things. But the ability to read this is also a manifestation of social intelligence. Now, let's get down to specifics. Here you are, sitting with this girl. You really want her. You want to make that clear to her. But at the same time, you absolutely do not want to scare her off or make her freeze up. You don't want her to shut down or slap you, right? So what do? I'm about to give you all the necessary advice. Listen carefully and remember. How to do this with words. Firstly, I am sure that words are the least risky tool, as words are easily turned into a joke. Show her your interest. You don't need to say directly, "Wow, you are so cool, I want to sleep with you." Start by using a specific vocabulary. Choose your words carefully. When you meet, use a pet name. "Hi, how are you, beautiful? How are you, darling?" If she doesn't react negatively, then silence is a sign of consent. She accepts such an address. For example, if a guy says to me, "Hi, miss," I'll immediately reply, "No chance, don't call me that." Other girls might react differently, and I wouldn't respond so sharply in real life, but a normal girl will definitely react. Show some social intelligence. Even if she doesn't tell you directly that she dislikes being addressed that way, you'll immediately see it on her face or in her body language. She might pull away, grimace, or somehow show her disapproval. So start with that. In conversation, even if you're discussing the weather, her job, family, how her day went, or vacation plans, it's natural to find different conversation topics. But even the most innocent topics don't prevent you from consciously inserting words or phrases with a sexual undertone, making light hints. Of course, this isn't about vulgar jokes in a rustic style, but about playfully reacting to her words. For example, if she carelessly says she got hot while running to a meeting, you can quite reasonably reply, "Well, why don't you take something off? Since you're sweating, maybe we should take a shower." Play with this in an interesting way. Obviously, you shouldn't suggest a shower if you're sitting in a restaurant, but you've got the gist. Respond with a touch of flirtation. Make it clear to her that you are not hiding your intentions. If this stage is successfully completed, you can safely move on to discussing specific sexual topics. For some, the favorite topic will be relationships between men and women. For others, gossip. In short, talk about sex, about intimate moments. With me, for example, this tactic has already been used, and it was done quite skillfully, although I understood that it was complete nonsense. The guy pretended to look at his phone, smirked, and said, "Ah, this is my best friend. You can't imagine what he's writing to me." And he told me about his buddy's sexual failures, asked my opinion, and so on. I think it was a great way to add a sexual subtext to the conversation. Firstly, he steered the topic in the right direction, and secondly, he asked for my opinion, making me get involved. It's a really very interesting maneuver. Therefore, I strongly advise you to use similar scenarios or touch upon other topics. If you are an expert in anything, sociology, psychology, philosophy, and so on, feel free to discuss it. But don't talk into the void, don't have a monologue. Your goal is dialogue. Ask her to get involved, to express her opinion, to, so to speak, get her feet wet. Excuse the unintentional pun. In this regard, and still within the scope of our conversation, there is one nuance that might seem harmless, but it is actually very important. Carefully choose your communication style. Adapt, among other things, to her speech style, so that a certain harmony arises between you. Avoid at all costs what completely kills attraction, swearing every other word, or the mannerisms of a typical beach poser. Although I'm not judging anyone. If she herself is like that, then play the role of a show-off. The point is to adapt and at the same time. So we've dealt with words. The second most important element that will allow you to go the furthest is the famous, universally known kinesthetic escalation, that is, physical contact. How do you transition from a simple friendly peck on the cheek when you meet to passionate thrusts accompanied by light moans? How? I'll tell you now. Act gently. There are intermediate stages here. You can't just jump from one to another, except, as I said, in special cases. Someone is bound to come along and say, "That's not true. She came to me. We kissed on the cheek, and 2 seconds later I was already taking her against the door." Of course there are special cases. If a woman comes to your home and you've already done all the sexualization work in advance, then you can take her roughly right at the threshold if you want. But not everyone is like that. And if your first date is at McDonald's, you won't be able to lay her down at the checkout 2 seconds after greeting her. This is why you need to start the escalation gradually. Again, if you have developed social intelligence, you will be able to speed up the process and skip some stages. But still, start with harmless, socially acceptable physical contact that will not scare her off under any circumstances. For example, when you kiss her on the cheek upon meeting, place your hand on her shoulder. When you sit down, let your legs accidentally touch. When you hand her something, touch her hand, her fingers. Start with such small, seemingly unintentional or completely natural gestures. And it's even better if she notices from the very beginning that you are generally a tactile person. Then everything will go even easier. Then, as the conversation develops, you will surely have the opportunity to get physically closer. Getting physically closer means, look, we are all surrounded by a kind of virtual imaginary capsule, which represents our personal intimate zone, and most of the time we really don't like it when it's invaded. Again, forgive the unintentional pun. So your task in this kinesthetic escalation is to close the distance and manage to enter this most intimate zone, to make her accept your physical presence nearby, and most importantly, so that it doesn't cause her discomfort or tension. To do this, use touches on places that don't usually cause people strong embarrassment. Her arm, her wrist, to, for example, look at jewelry, her ankle, if she's showing off amazing shoes she just bought, and so on. Then little by little, depending on her reaction, if she reciprocates these touches, you can move on to caresses, that is, to more insistent movements, stroking her arm, hand, knee, perhaps even her thigh or neck, which, by the way, is a very erogenous zone that is often forgotten. In short, start with harmless, quick gestures to then move on to slightly more persistent ones if you feel she is receptive, and step by step, you will achieve your goal. Of course, at some point, you'll have to act more decisively, and to understand if she's ready to go further, I think only a kiss will help. A kiss is the best indicator of whether she's ready to agree to more. Yes, some girls don't like kissing on the lips, but you always have kisses on the neck, light pecks on the corners of the mouth, and similar things in your arsenal. They will allow you to understand just as well if she's ready to continue. So, I've briefly covered all the most important points. I hope my advice will be useful to you, and I hope that this breakdown of how to sexualize communication will help you understand women better. After all, this is my main goal, to help you understand female psychology so that we can all live in harmony with each other.